Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is David Firshein. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Brillouins Energy, and we're having a great day with Sterling Allen going down to SRI International in Menlo Park as we continue a status update exploration of Brillouins Energy Corp's CECR technology.
And CECR?
Yes. Controlled electron capture reaction.
Our controlled electron capture reaction technology. We haven't invented a cloaking device yet, which I would like to invent in a transporter like in Star Trek so that we could bypass the traffic.
Got a mess up here.
But other than that, we're excited about what we're doing.
You got to the far right.
I got a car here that is going to let me in.
Yeah, Dave is in charge of bringing all the money in, keeping these guys
Honest.
Yes, I've been dealing more than anyone at Brillouins with the investment community and attempting to create an honest, accurate, and real conversation about the risks and rewards involved in investing in a venture like this, and in the possibility of this technology. And it's exciting. It's a great thing to be involved with. For people that really care about an exciting future, they should contact us. But no one should invest in this that does not treat it as a high-risk investment. That's still what it is today, no matter what anybody tells you anywhere. This type of technology is still very new, and it's going to go through a very exciting period of growth and development in the coming months and years. So that's
Yeah, I was asking you about Series A, Series B.
okay. So Brillouins Energy Corp is now 5 years old, and it raised a total of $2.5 billion and change in its A round. Some of that came in way before the A round formally closed in May of 2012. So there were early investor convertible notes, as is often done with seed stage ventures, that came in over a long period of time, and then everything bunched up, and we brought in a nice chunk of money in the second quarter of 2012, and that brought us over $2.5 million quickly, and that really accelerated the efforts of Brillouins. And then since that time, we have brought in convertible notes that led up to the formation of a Series B round, which are now converting into Series B stock, and we have brought in over $2 million there, actually, I believe 2.1. And we have some other small contributions from our patent law firm and things like that. And then we recently closed our first paid commercial revenue license, and took in a nice little bit of revenue that has brought our total capitalization to date to nicely over $5 million. So that's the total amount of money that's gone into Brillouins to date in cash. I would say certainly equal to, if not a lot more than that, in sweat equity has been contributed. And we are in the process of accelerating towards the close of our B round here in the first quarter of 2014. Intending to bring in at least another few $1 million, but if we can, we're going to bring in probably 5 or 6 or 7, depending on the interest level of investors and the continuing growth of the technology.
I asked how many of the A round investors are investing in the B round.
Several key investors have already bought into the B round, but a lot of the early A round investors were small angel investors, and so they took the risk that they could afford back then. Our biggest lead investor that led our A round with over $1 million put in a little bit more into the earliest part of the B round, helping get it started.
Let's jump subject for a minute and go back to the history that you were talking about over lunch. Kind of the history of where this started and how it's gone, some of the major milestones along the way.
Robert Goddess originally came up with his concepts 20 years ago when he first started studying the whole subject of cold fusion. About 11 to 12 years ago, he began to tinker with applying his ideas when he saw that the field was not growing very quickly and that people didn't understand what he thought he understood about how to make it work. And he had what we call a predecessor period. I have to pay attention to the traffic here. Where he did experiments out of a spare room in his house, his daughter's former nursery room, actually. And I forget what the 980?
That way, right?
980?
Yeah.
To 880, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Yes. There was a period between 2002, call it, and 2006, where Robert did a lot of very early stage experimentation, which became known as Phase 1, where he ran experiments over and over again using an open container and a solution, a liquid solution, and an electrolysis type of application, but unique to his technical ideas, which convinced the patent attorneys that did all of Robert's earliest patent work, and took stock and actually took cash out of pocket, very unusual, ultimately to file our first broad patent with 22 claims. Now, this was actually before Brillouin was incorporated. There was actually a predecessor entity called Profusion Energy, which was Robert and small efforts from a couple of other people that ultimately didn't coalesce into anything significant except for Robert's personal efforts. In 2008, Robert was attempting to find more support from professionals, and he was introduced to Bob George, who's sitting here in the front seat with me. And Bob slowly began to do due diligence and then got more intrigued as he studied the field and what Robert had done and saw the patent work that Robert had achieved by that point in time. And he finally decided to come on board as CEO in the development stage and help Robert really form a corporation that would encompass all of his work. And so Profusion Energy was folded. All of the work that had been done got contributed into a new corporation called Brillouin Energy Corp, formally incorporated in January of 2009. And they set off attempting to move towards the venture capital stage. Raising money was difficult. It was a very complex technology to explain to people. Starting from scratch, there were no, good support materials that could articulate things well. It took a long time to get the story clearly articulated, which is often one of the biggest challenges in getting investors to believe you, is being able to actually explain yourself in a succinct way. But slowly, between 2009 and 2011, they raised $500,000, which seeded the effort. I started helping. I met Robert myself at the time that he incorporated Brillouin and slowly began to help part-time. Nobody was paid for all of these years until really the end of 2011. Before anybody actually even started to take a draw, which first was just Robert and later Bob George here. But during that period, the small amount of seed capital that was raised did build the company's first generation wet boiler, which had a breakthrough success in early 2011 in terms of its testing regimen, demonstrating a dramatic amount of control and excess heat at the time, given what it was, where it ran for, I believe, several weeks, or at least 3 weeks. And they maxed out the design capability of the system. It was built with off-the-shelf parts from other industries. It was a demonstration piece that was not ever intended to be commercialized, but to make the point that these ideas could be applied to the blueprint of a potential commercial prototype. Finally, with enough support from everybody, including the people you've seen today, we began to really start to raise some real money in the fourth quarter of 2011 and the first half of 2012. We brought in during that time $2 million and formally closed our A round in May of 2012. We then began to apply the funds and build our first hot tube. Slowly got to work later on our next generation true commercial potential prototype wet boiler. During this time, we began to take in convertible notes as a prelude to a Series B round from interested investors that came strictly unsolicited. You know, they came to us, and some people invested some real money. In the summer of 2013, we kicked off formally our B round and started to take checks, which we've taken in a small percentage of the round, but combined with the earlier notes, we've now brought in over $2 million of Series B money. And we are now accelerating towards the closing of the B round based on growing interest that's accelerating, and expect to close the B round before the end of the first quarter.
Let's talk for a minute about the licensee that just signed up from South Korea and what you see as in terms of trend for that to happen more often, and what's kind of in queue already.
So one of the things that's true about Brillouin is that while it has been a classic, venture stage enterprise that has grown literally from purely a classic inventor's concepts into what is now a real development stage company, every little bit that's been invested adds to the momentum. All the dollars that have come in have been accretive in terms of increasing interest and increasing momentum. And that's the same way that our first paid commercial revenue license happened as well. People have heard about us, they've seen our website, they've seen stories about us on PezWiki and in other places in the blogosphere, and they get interested, they get intrigued when the people that are paying attention to it. And that's how our first paid commercial licensee showed up. They first heard about us over 3 years ago, came and visited us, watched us, stayed in touch with us, got really interested last year as they saw the progress continue to advance, began to negotiate for the rights to South Korea. They're a South Korean industrial company. They wanted to get in very early.
I presume you can't give the name?
That's correct. I mean, it's a confidential license agreement, and we're not permitted to say who they are, and there are things that they don't say about us either. But they are a middle market industrial company dealing with infrastructure issues in the country of South Korea. They're not one of the biggest companies in South Korea or anything like that, but they're a good, solid, privately held company with a real industrial base and real revenues and significant infrastructure of their own. And they've got a great CEO and founder and entrepreneur who himself is a professional engineer. And they like what we're doing. And before the technology gets really expensive and really heads to the big leagues, they can afford to take a chance on something like this. So we all compromised, and they licensed the rights to South Korea with an initial non-refundable upfront deposit that began funding last quarter, and they still owe us more money this quarter. And then as we continue to hit milestones in terms of commercialization, they will pay us more, and we will help them and work as partners in rolling out all of the product possibilities of this technology in South Korea. And we get a healthy royalty on their revenues. And if the technology works, everybody wins big time.
In terms of licensing, are you going to be going with territory-based or application-based, or both?
Both.
How does both work?
It's going to depend on the rate of efficacy of the technological commercialization process. As the technology becomes more and more powerful, more robust, more able to be applied, it becomes, there's a huge number of possibilities. So it would depend on who would come to us and what they would want. Let's say a huge industrial global conglomerate came and was very intent on making life really interesting. Well, they could probably buy a major territory. On the other hand, there's so many applications for this technology, we would be foolish not to try to license every single one of them. So it depends how who gets excited the most and how fast people want to roll it out in certain areas.
The company in South Korea, where they got a territory and a zillion applications, so to speak, how would it work for them if, as new players come along and get application licenses, are they going to then be sub-licensing from that?
They have a sub-license right in South Korea that is part of their contract that we carefully negotiated. It's part of any revenue model for this type of technology. So, we were willing to sacrifice not sacrifice, but have South Korea be a loss leader. It's really a loss leader in both directions. You see, as this technology comes closer and closer to really being commercialized, the kind of interest that we see evident from the likes of medium to large companies is dramatic. And so if this technology was already selling the kind of prices that we would probably be able to charge for rights to a particular application or rights to a particular area, around the globe, could be very significant. Could be in the tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars, given what it portends. You're talking about everything from electricity and desalination to process heat in various types of commercial establishments for industrial uses, commercial uses,
residential hot water.
Yeah, just not even getting to that. I mean, the markets are just gigantic. So, it's a large planet. It's okay with us that we make a very relatively low price agreement with a company on the contingency of the commercialization of the technology. The next license would be much more expensive.
As you know, there are a lot of other genres of clean energy technologies emerging, and it seems like some of them may be better suited to particular applications. Mobile power, for example, cell phone power. That's not going to be something that Brillouins can be powering probably ever, just because of the apparatus that's involved. Are you kind of honing in on particular application sectors that make the most sense for the Brillouin technology?
We're certainly starting off focused on what is the most logical technical pathway to commercialization. I mean, obviously, a box that creates heat, small, medium, or large, lower level heat, higher level heat, controllable at extremely low cost, where the input power is very low, if not negligible, where no pollution is coming out of it, where the device can last for years. That's a dramatic breakthrough of a product possibility.
Those costs you just listed, those are all maintenance costs. What about the upfront capital cost for the device?
It's going to depend on how the remainder of this commercial testing stage turns out. We don't know every single factor yet in what that's likely to be. But based on the earliest indications of the work that's gone on so far, we think that the footprint of a device is going to be dramatically lower than any comparable energy generation device. You take a large coal-fired boiler, that's a big piece of metal, that's a big piece of iron. We, by comparison, should be able to make the same kind of heat in a much smaller physical space relative to that boiler. We should be able to manufacture the components of our heat generation device
with no
relatively
supply chain issue.
well. It's not a it's a very sophisticated piece of technology in a very small space inside of some very basic conventional engineering with a high level of heat at a concentrated point coming out of the device. So it should be very scalable, but it's early. Until you go through that process, you don't know what the final outcome of those metrics are going to be. But from just a conceptual design standpoint at this stage, it should be highly competitive, maybe disruptive.
Very good.
If you want, you can send your lecture fees to. Don't put that on the. It's
Yeah, I was asking you about Series A, Series B.
okay. So Brillouin Energy Corp is now 5 years old, and it raised a total of $2.5 billion and change in its A round. Some of that came in way before the A round formally closed in May of 2012. So there were early our controlled electron capture reaction technology. We haven't invented a cloaking device yet, which I would like to invent in a transporter like in Star Trek, so that we could bypass the traffic.
Got a mess up here.
But other than that, we're excited about what we're doing.
You have to go to the far right.
I got a car here that is going to let me in.
Yeah, Dave is in charge of bringing all the money in, keeping these guys
Honest.
Yes, I've been dealing more than anyone at Brillouin with the investment community and attempting to create an honest, accurate, and real conversation about the risks and rewards involved in investing in a venture like this, and in the possibility of this technology. And it's exciting. It's a great thing to be involved with. For people that really care about an exciting future, they should contact us. But no one should invest in this that does not treat it as a high-risk investment. That's still what it is today, no matter what anybody tells you anywhere. This type of technology is still very new, and it's going to go through a very exciting period of growth and development in the coming months and years. So, that.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is David Firshein. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Brillouin Energy, and we're having a great day with Sterling Allen, going down to SRI International in Menlo Park as we continue a status update exploration of Brillouin Energy Corp's CECR technology.
And CECR?
Yes. Controlled